Imagine a library so vast that it held nearly every book ever written in the ancient world. A place where the greatest minds on Earth came to study, invent, and debate, where grand halls of learning were filled with great scrolls, holding the ultimate collection of human knowledge. It was a place surrounded by vast gardens, where great ships would sail into port and help fill the library's shelves with treasures from the globe's greatest civilizations. Now imagine all of that consumed in a raging fire, one that blazed so hot nothing could escape, and with it, the secrets of the ancient world went up in smoke. That's how most people picture the fabled burning of the great library of Alexandria in ancient Egypt. But that's not really how it happened. And while it may be a more dramatic story, I'm going to tell you a more interesting one, the real one. What was it like to step inside its grand lecture halls? Why has the mystery of the library's fall from grace been so fiercely debated for thousands of years? And what if the single greatest collection of human knowledge in history was destroyed not just by fire, but by apathy? Join me as we unravel all this and much more and enter the Codex Legendarium. I'm Shelby Melanson. The Library of Alexandria, the greatest house of knowledge in the ancient world. A warehouse and an archive for the collective knowledge of human civilization. 2,000 years ago, all of that suddenly goes up in smoke, utterly destroyed. But how could something so treasured, the jewel of the Egyptian pharaoh's empire, just vanish? And a bigger question, what if it happened again today? Before we can start to answer any of that, we have to understand how it happened back then. So today, let's take a tour of humanity's greatest library and find out exactly what's behind the mystery of its demise. And next week, stick around for part 2, a discussion all about how we've built ourselves a new great library in the cloud. And just what might happen if that burned all over again. So, why a library? Why create a repository for the world's collective wisdom? And even further, why was the goal, to collect every book ever written, so crucial that the city's ruler actually demanded that every book that entered city limits be collected by law? To understand that, you have to first understand a little about the philosophies behind both ancient Egypt and ancient Greece. Here's why. The Great Library, also known as the Museum of Alexandria, the Greek Museon, and even the seat of the Muses. It was built in the Egyptian port city of, you guessed it, Alexandria in 283 BC, appropriately named for the city's founder, you guessed it again, Alexander the Great, who established it in 331 BC. As the city was rising to greatness, one of Alexander's generals and most trusted military officers had a kind of light bulb moment. His name was Ptolemy I Soter, and besides his military service, he was a historian and also a close childhood friend and lifelong companion of Alexander. And he later went on to become a pharaoh and rule Egypt for a combined total of 40 years. This is important, you'll see why in a second. He was also of Macedonian Greek descent, and he led the royal house that oversaw the final and longest-lasting dynasty of Egypt's ruled by Pharaoh era. But before all of that, he had an idea to create a library that would consolidate all known knowledge and basically establish the city as a pinnacle of culture and education of the entire Hellenistic world, which, just in case you need a refresher, was the era in Europe and the Mediterranean between when Alexander the Great died and when Rome conquered Egypt a few hundred years later. Here's where we get to the philosophy part. The ancient Greeks looked at Egypt as the basis of all known advanced knowledge at the time, especially in math and astronomy. On the other hand, they viewed themselves as building upon that knowledge, especially in philosophy and science. But a lot of their culture embraced not only generating new knowledge, but kind of compiling and preserving ancient knowledge, And that part was critical. Hence, a library. As it turns out, it was established pretty dang quickly. But even still, the creation of the world's greatest, most comprehensive library ever takes some time. So, while ground was broken and knowledge, aka books, aka scrolls, were collected during the pharaoh's time, most scholars now believe that it was his son, Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who got the whole thing fully established. Okay, so now we have a library, one that attracted some of the most brilliant minds of the time from all over the Mediterranean. Many of them studied, taught, or worked there. And as for that employment, over 100 scribes supposedly toiled away in charge of one meticulous, painstaking, but critical and legally mandated job: copying books. Ptolemy III actually decreed that all ships that sailed into the port of Alexandria were to surrender all their books that were on board. From there, those books were taken to the library and copied by the scribes. The crazy part is that the library decided it was just gonna keep the originals, tag them with their origin, and then only return the copies to the ships they came from. Sometimes to the extreme displeasure of their original owners, might I add. Talk about an aggressive acquisition policy. But ultimately, that's how the library became known as the world's ancient knowledge warehouse. And it really did stand up to that name. Writings from ancient times suggest the library held anywhere from 400 to 700,000 books, or, like I mentioned a second ago, papyrus scrolls. Basically, these are thin strips of the cypress papyrus plant that were bound together into a surprisingly durable form of paper. Seriously, these scrolls were used throughout ancient Egypt for over 5,000 years. From there, the seat of the Muses just kept growing. And in its heyday, it looked a whole lot more like a university than a library. There were lecture halls, meeting rooms, and scientific laboratories. Some of those labs were part of a medical school where students practiced, believe it or not, human dissection to learn about the body's anatomy. That particular form of education, by the way, was super rare prior to the Renaissance, which also didn't happen for roughly another 1,000 years. While the exact layout of the library has sadly been lost to us, we also do know that there was not only all of that, but also a large dining room, extensive gardens to walk through on the premises, and according to one ancient historian, even a royal menagerie, aka a zoo, home to a massive snake, specifically a 50 or longer foot-long boa constrictor, an entire herd of war elephants, and, quote, other kinds of animals which had never before been seen and were objects of amazement. Okay, so the library was huge, grandiose, and backed by pharaohs. It was so large that it even expanded into a daughter library called the Temple of Serapis, located nearby. So, with that level of prestige and power behind it, what could possibly have brought it to its knees after standing strong for hundreds of years? Remember at the beginning of this episode when I told you that the story that everybody thinks of when you talk about the Great Library's demise, flames, burning, that was a dramatic one, but that the real story, if you ask me, is a way more interesting one. There are a bunch of reasons for that, so seriously, strap in. Because, to be honest, the true story is pretty dang complex and dramatic as well, and it's been debated for millennia. Mostly because exactly how and why it was lost is still a mystery. But to quote a really great article on the whole saga from Ohio State University, the mystery exists not for lack of suspects, but from an excess of them. Let's start at the most obvious. The library did burn, but not the way that people think it did. Fast forward to the year 48 BC. The library has been standing proudly for over 300 years, but the great port city of Alexandria is now at war. Specifically, Queen Cleopatra VII versus her brother. Now, by this time, a special ally to Cleopatra had come to Egypt to defend her, none other than Roman military general Julius Caesar. But As he chased his main rival into Egypt by way of the sea, he got surrounded by hostile forces. That rival, by the way, was Pompey the Great, who was also his former ally and brother-in-law, by the way. So yeah, backstabbing anyone? After a fleet of Egyptian ships cut Caesar off inside Alexandria's port, he was surrounded, outnumbered, and trapped inside enemy territory. And only one solution remained: set fire to the ships in Alexandria's harbor to destroy the enemy fleet. The flames spread like wildfire, and quickly to swaths of the city, and the Great Library was among the casualties. Greek philosopher and historian Plutarch wrote in section 49 of his work, Life of Julius Caesar, quote, "When the enemy tried to cut off his fleet, he was forced to repel the danger by using fire, and this spread from the dockyards and destroyed the Great Library." So, Caesar burned the library. Case closed, right? Actually, no. And here's where the mystery of all this comes in. Not everybody agreed with Plutarch's description. 1 year after the burning in 49 BC, Roman philosopher Seneca wrote this in his essay on the tranquility of the mind. Quote, 40,000 books were burned at Alexandria. And based on the 500,000+ books, scrolls, estimate, that means that only a small fraction of the library actually burned, if he's correct. Maybe one hall or a particular building. The trouble is, Seneca quotes the Roman historian Livy, most of whom's work has since been lost. Just in case you need another kind of wild fun fact with all this, Seneca's essay is actually a huge criticism of not only book collecting, but the Library of Alexandria itself. His reasoning is that a few books means dedicating your life to their mastery. A massive collection, one so big that a person couldn't realistically read it all even in their lifetime, is just for show, and that it holds little actual value. He wrote, quote, "What is the use of books in libraries innumerable, if scarce in a lifetime the master reads the titles? A student is burdened by a crowd of authors, not instructed, and it is far better to devote yourself to a few than to lose your way among a multitude." Honestly, fair point. The thing is, besides the Great Fire, there are a ton of other stories of the Great Library's decline. More than 300 years after Caesar's fire in 273 AD, the Roman Emperor Aurelian ordered a siege on the city of Alexandria. The fighting almost entirely destroyed swaths of the city, including the Bruchion Quarter. Unfortunately, that's also where the library stood. So, at absolute best, its buildings probably took on major damage. 120 years or so after that, the nearby temple of Serapis, Alexandria's daughter library, took on even more damage. By 391 AD, Christianity had become the only religion acknowledged in the Roman Empire, and the emperor at the time decided that it was time for anything pagan, including temples that honored Greco-Egyptian gods like Serapis, get it, Temple of Serapis, had to go. And ultimately, the daughter library of Alexandria was gone. There is one last story that takes place some 300 years later from then, when Arab forces conquered the city in 642 AD, that says the last of the library's surviving scrolls were then burned at that time. But historians now believe that was basically fake news, especially since the report about it was written 300 years after that it supposedly happened. So then, what actually caused the library's fall from grace? Here's the thing. Despite all of that destruction, the library stood proudly for 700 years. And in truth, the only thing powerful enough to truly destroy it, according to historians, wasn't some ferocious burning or war-driven collateral damage even. It was a quiet destruction, the kind of decay that only seeps in when people stop caring about something. Somewhere along the way, Alexandria's status as an intellectual pinnacle faded. Funding cuts sent support elsewhere. scholars left. Scrolls started to degrade. The once proud halls were left to succumb to the slow rot of institutional decay. But if you ask me, there's actually still one more level. So, not long ago, I reread the book Fahrenheit 451. You know, burning books, a dystopian warning against censorship, the dangers of conformity, you get the idea. But here's the thing. It's a story that gets talked about a lot, but if you actually read it, you'll know there is a much deeper message that, in my opinion, is a far more troubling one. Here's a quick refresher in case you haven't read it in a while. The story's main character, Montag, is a fireman. When a call comes in at his firehouse, he and his fellow first responders take their fire engine and fire hoses to a house. Except, unlike in our world, their job is to start fires, not put them out. Houses reported to have books in them are burned to the ground. And through a tense conversation between Montag and his fire chief, we find out why. Some decades ago, people realized that thinking was painful, that learning about history and reflecting philosophically hurt, and then it would be much more pleasant for everyone to just never think about those things again. So they burned the books to save themselves from the unhappiness of knowledge. And as a replacement, wall-to-ceiling televisions that cover all four walls of a room, blasting sitcoms that brainwash and dull the senses, that make people forget what it is to be human, and also hide the fact that in reality, they're all profoundly depressed. I mean, Montag's wife literally attempts to, let's say, leave her life during the book's opening, and the rest of the characters seem pretty dang miserable too. That is, aside from the one young, beautiful girl that's heavily implied to be one of the only ones in this whole saga who reads books, but who also mysteriously vanishes and is probably dead by the book's halfway mark. Yeah, I know, I digress, it's kind of a rough read. Anyway, you get to the end. Montag had a traumatic experience that made him question his job, and his entire society for that matter. Basically, he read some books, had his own house burned down to the ground, and makes a daring escape from the city after a police chase in a run-in with a vicious mechanical monster. He makes a few days' trek through the wilderness and then meets a group of rebels. Except, when they introduce themselves, they give their own names as well as the names of authors of great books. We're talking Plato, Marcus Aurelius, and Einstein, just to name a couple of them. Quote, "Here we all are, Montag. Aristophanes and Mahatma Gandhi and Gautama Buddha and Confucius and Thomas Love Peacock and Thomas Jefferson and Mr. Lincoln, if you please. We are also Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John." They explain that they have a method for making anyone remember any book that he has read previously. And so, for the books that were burned, they still actually survive through the people who read them. Quote, "We're nothing more than dust jackets for books." They also hint that there are many, many more of these people out there carrying other books and who are committed to saving them, to passing them on to their children, until one day the world may be ready to hear them again. Over in the UK, almost 800 libraries have closed in the past decade alone. In the US, the Institute of Museum and Library Services reveals that in-person library visits across the entire country have plummeted by 49% in the past 10 years. That drop is even higher for cities like Chicago, San Francisco, Philadelphia, and LA, where visits are down anywhere from 66 to 74%. Budget cuts and lack of community interest are spurring temporary closures or reduced hours as well. On the other hand, to quote this article from Time magazine, the power of the legend of Alexandria prompted the creation of a new Library of Alexandria in the modern Egyptian city, with a focus on storing and preserving digital information. Heck, back in 2020, Reporters Without Borders launched a project called the Uncensored Library, which, believe it or not, is a downloadable world inside the game Minecraft, complete with an enormous library full of actual books. Specifically, books that have been banned in countries with human rights and censorship issues, so that no matter where a player is in the world, he or she can still visit a free and open library. Maybe the key here isn't to construct another universal library. Maybe the key is to go the way of Montag's rebels in Fahrenheit 451, to keep the value and the desire for real education close to us, to be willing to learn and study things the classical way, and to carry that knowledge with us. I think cultural anthropologist Mary Catherine Bateson said it best. Quote, "We are not what we know, but what we are willing to learn." But what do you think? What was it like to wander through the Great Library? And what or who was the real reason for its demise? Are we headed towards that same fate all over again today also? We're going to talk about that one next week in part 2, so seriously, tune in. And are we, as people, the real library? Are we but humble dust jackets for books as well? I love that quote, and I would also love to hear your thoughts in the comments about all of this. And if you have an idea for something you'd like to see a future episode on, let me know. And of course, if you've enjoyed this deep dive into mysteries, myths, culture, and science, please take just a second to like and share this video, hit the hype button, which is the latest way to tell YouTube you like what you see, and if you want to see more, subscribe. It really helps get the word out there. Until next time, stay curious and stay legendary. And real quick, before you go, YouTube thinks that you will like this video, so you might want to check it out. Thank you.